By the time the police surrounded the mansion, that cold November night, Marcus Whitmore, one of the wealthiest men in America, was already sitting on the front steps with his hands behind his back, waiting to be arrested. His shirt was torn, his face was bruised, and when the officers asked him what happened, he looked up with tears streaming down his face and said 3 words that made no sense to anyone there. "She saved me." Nobody understood what he meant. Not the police, not the neighbors who'd gathered outside the gates, not the reporters who'd been tipped off about something terrible happening inside that house. But over the next 72 hours, investigators would uncover a story so shocking, so twisted, and so heartbreaking that it would dominate headlines for months. This is the true story of how a billionaire fell in love with his maid, and what happened next will leave you questioning everything you think you know about love, loyalty, and sacrifice. Marcus Whitmore wasn't born into wealth. He grew up in a trailer park in rural Ohio, raised by a single mother who worked 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. By the time he was 16, Marcus had dropped out of school to help support his family. He worked construction during the day and cleaned office buildings at night. But Marcus had something most people don't: a relentless drive to escape the life he was born into. By 25, he'd started his own construction company. By 30, he'd expanded into real estate development. By 40, he was worth over $2 billion. But success came at a cost. Marcus had become cold, calculating, and deeply isolated. His first wife, Catherine, had died in a car accident 5 years earlier, and since then Marcus had shut everyone out. He rarely smiled. He rarely spoke unless it was business. His employees feared him. His business partners respected him but kept their distance. And his mansion, a sprawling estate on the outskirts of Greenwich, Connecticut, felt more like a mausoleum than a home. That's where Elena Martinez came in. Elena was 28 years old when she was hired to work as a maid at the Whitmore estate. She'd immigrated from Honduras 6 years earlier with her younger brother, hoping to build a better life in America. Her brother had since moved to California, but Elena stayed on the East Coast, working long hours to send money back to her mother, who was battling diabetes and couldn't afford treatment. Elena worked quietly, efficiently, and without complaint. She never asked for days off. She never gossiped with the other staff. She just did her job and went home to her tiny studio apartment in Stamford every night. The other maids noticed something about her, though. She had this calm presence, this gentle way of moving through the world that made even the coldest rooms feel a little warmer. One of the housekeepers later said, "Elena didn't just clean the house. She brought something back to life in it, something we didn't even know was missing." Marcus first noticed Elena 3 months after she started working there. He'd been walking past the library one afternoon when he saw her standing on a stepladder, carefully dusting the top shelves of his late wife's book collection. Most of the staff avoided that room. Catherine had loved that library, and after she died, Marcus had kept it exactly as she'd left it. But Elena didn't know that. She was humming softly to herself as she worked, completely unaware that Marcus was standing in the doorway, watching her. He didn't say anything. He just stood there for a moment, struck by how peaceful she seemed, how unbothered by the weight of the world. And for the first time in years, Marcus felt something other than numbness. He felt curious. Over the next few weeks, Marcus found himself paying more attention to Elena. He'd walk past rooms. She was cleaning just to catch a glimpse of her. He'd linger in the hallway outside the kitchen when he heard her voice. He started leaving notes for her, small things at first. A thank you note for organizing his study. A request to leave the windows open in the morning because he liked the fresh air. Elena never responded to the notes directly, but she always did what he asked. And slowly, without either of them fully realizing it, something shifted between them. Marcus started coming home earlier. He'd find reasons to be in the same room as Elena, asking her questions about her day, her family, her life. At first, Elena was uncomfortable. She knew the other staff were watching. She knew how it looked. But Marcus wasn't like the men she'd worked for in the past. He didn't leer at her. He didn't make inappropriate comments. He just seemed genuinely interested in her as a person. And despite herself, Elena started to let her guard down. But not everyone was happy about this growing connection. Victor Kane, Marcus's longtime business partner and closest advisor, had been working with Marcus for over 15 years. Victor was the one who'd helped Marcus navigate the ruthless world of commercial real estate. He was the one who'd brokered the deals that made Marcus a billionaire. And he was the one who stood to inherit a significant portion of Marcus's empire if anything ever happened to him. Victor had been waiting patiently for years, watching Marcus spiral deeper into isolation, knowing that eventually Marcus would need him to take over the company. But now something was changing. Marcus was smiling again. He was distracted. He was spending less time in meetings and more time at the mansion. And Victor knew exactly why. He'd seen the way Marcus looked at Elena. He'd heard the whispers among the staff, and he didn't like it one bit. Victor started watching Elena. He'd show up at the mansion unannounced, asking the other staff questions about her. Where did she come from? Who were her friends? Did she have a boyfriend? The other maids found it strange, but they didn't dare question him. Victor was powerful, and everyone knew it. One of the housekeepers later told investigators, Victor had this way of making you feel like you were being interrogated, even when he was just making small talk. He scared us. But Elena didn't notice. She was too focused on her own growing feelings for Marcus. She knew it was dangerous. She knew it could cost her the job she desperately needed. But she couldn't help herself. Marcus made her feel seen in a way no one ever had before. He listened to her stories about her mother, her brother, her dreams of one day opening a small bakery. He didn't treat her like a maid. He treated her like an equal. And slowly, against all logic and reason, Elena started to fall in love with him. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. My mom said I can't reach 1,000 subscribers. Let's prove her wrong. 6 months after Elena started working at the mansion, Marcus did something that shocked everyone. He invited her to have dinner with him. Not in the kitchen, not in the staff quarters, in the formal dining room. Elena hesitated at first. She knew what the other staff would think. But Marcus insisted. He said he was tired of eating alone. So that night, Elena sat across from Marcus at the long mahogany table, feeling completely out of place in her simple dress, while Marcus wore a suit. They talked for hours. Marcus told her about his childhood, his regrets, his loneliness. Elena told him about the village she grew up in, The sacrifices her mother had made, the guilt she felt about being so far away. And somewhere in the middle of that conversation, something unspoken passed between them. They both knew this was more than just dinner. This was the beginning of something that could never be taken back. But Victor was watching. He'd installed cameras in parts of the mansion that Marcus didn't know about. He'd been monitoring Marcus's movements, his communications, his finances, and now he had proof. Marcus was falling in love with the maid. Victor knew this was his chance. If he could prove that Marcus was mentally unstable, emotionally compromised, unfit to run the company, he could take control. But he needed to move carefully. He needed to make sure that when the time came, Marcus would have no choice but to step aside. So Victor started planting seeds of doubt. He'd mentioned to other board members that Marcus seemed distracted. He'd suggest to the staff that Elena might be taking advantage of Marcus's grief. He'd spread rumors that Elena was only interested in Marcus's money. And slowly, the whispers started to grow louder. Marcus didn't care. For the first time in years, he felt alive. He started taking Elena on drives through the countryside. He'd leave expensive gifts on her bed, jewelry, clothes, books. Elena was uncomfortable with the extravagance, but she didn't want to hurt Marcus's feelings. She accepted the gifts, but rarely wore them. She didn't want people to think she was using him. But the other staff had already made up their minds. They stopped talking to her. They stopped inviting her to lunch. One of the maids even accused her of seducing Marcus to secure her future. Elena tried to defend herself, but it was useless. She was alone in that house, except for Marcus. And that isolation only pushed them closer together. Then one night in early October, everything changed. Marcus had thrown a small dinner party for some business associates. Victor was there, of course, along with several board members and their spouses. Elena was working that night, serving drinks and clearing plates. She tried to stay invisible, but Victor made sure everyone noticed her. He'd make comments about how attentive she was, how devoted, how lucky Marcus was to have such dedicated staff. The other guests laughed politely, but there was an edge to Victor's words that made Elena's skin crawl. After dinner, as the guests were leaving, Victor cornered Elena in the hallway. He stood too close, his breath smelling of whiskey. "You think you're smart, don't you?" he said quietly. "You think Marcus actually cares about you?" Elena tried to step around him, but Victor blocked her path. "He's using you, and when he's done, you'll be thrown out like all the others." Elena's hands were shaking, but she kept her voice steady. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said. Victor smiled coldly. "Yes, you do. And so does everyone else in this house." Then he walked away, leaving Elena standing alone in the dark hallway, her heart pounding. Elena didn't tell Marcus about the confrontation. She didn't want to cause problems, but she started to feel unsafe. She noticed Victor showing up at the mansion more frequently, always watching her, always asking questions. She found her personal belongings moved in her room. She started getting strange phone calls late at night. No one on the other end, just breathing. She told herself she was being paranoid, but deep down, she knew something was wrong. And then, one afternoon, Elena found a note slipped under her door. It was typed, not handwritten. It said, "Leave now, or you'll regret it." Elena's blood ran cold. She wanted to tell Marcus, but she was afraid. What if he didn't believe her? What if he thought she was making it up for attention? so she stayed silent, hoping the threats would stop. But they didn't stop. They escalated. One night, Elena came back to her room to find her clothes slashed with scissors. Another night, she found a dead bird on her pillow. She was terrified, but she didn't know where to turn. The other staff wouldn't help her. And Marcus was oblivious. He was too busy trying to convince the board to approve a major new development project, too distracted by Victor's constant demands for meetings and reports. Elena felt completely alone. And that's when she made a decision. She started documenting everything. The notes, the threats, the strange phone calls. She wrote everything down in a small notebook and hid it under her mattress. She didn't know if anyone would ever believe her, but at least she'd have proof. Then came the night of November 14th. The night everything fell apart. Marcus had been at a board meeting all day, and he came home exhausted and frustrated. Victor had been pushing hard for Marcus to sign over more control of the company, and Marcus was beginning to suspect that something wasn't right. He'd started reviewing financial records, looking for discrepancies, and what he found made his blood run cold. Victor had been siphoning money from the company for years. Millions of dollars, hidden in offshore accounts, disguised as consulting fees and business expenses. Marcus realized that Victor wasn't just a business partner. He was a thief. And if Marcus confronted him, Victor would lose everything. Marcus knew he had to act carefully. He couldn't let Victor know that he'd discovered the truth. So he played along, agreeing to meet with Victor later that night at the mansion to discuss the new development project. But what Marcus didn't know was that Victor had already decided to take more drastic measures. He couldn't let Marcus destroy everything he'd built. He needed Marcus gone, permanently. That night, around 10 o'clock, Victor arrived at the mansion. Marcus was in his study, reviewing documents. Elena was upstairs, cleaning the guest rooms. The rest of the staff had gone home for the night. It was just the three of them in that huge empty house. Victor walked into the study, and Marcus could immediately tell something was off. Victor's eyes were cold. His jaw was clenched. "We need to talk," Victor said. Marcus stood up, trying to keep his voice calm. "I know what you've been doing, Victor. I know about the money." Victor didn't deny it. He just smiled. "You weren't supposed to find out," he said quietly. "This could have been so much easier." And then, before Marcus could react, Victor pulled a gun from his jacket. Marcus's heart stopped. "Victor, don't do this," he said, raising his hands. "We can figure this out." But Victor shook his head. "It's too late for that," he said. "You were supposed to stay broken, Marcus. You were supposed to stay alone. But you had to fall in love with that maid, didn't you? You had to start caring about something again." Marcus realized with horror what Victor was saying. This wasn't just about money. This was about control. Victor had been waiting for Marcus to self-destruct, and when that didn't happen, he decided to take matters into his own hands. Upstairs, Elena heard raised voices. She froze, her heart pounding. She crept to the top of the stairs and listened. She could hear Marcus pleading with Victor. She could hear the desperation in his voice. And then she heard something that made her blood run cold. "I'll make it look like an accident," Victor was saying. "You've been unstable for years. Everyone knows it. They'll believe you killed yourself." Elena didn't think. She just moved. She ran down the stairs as quietly as she could, her mind racing. She didn't have a weapon. She didn't have a plan. but she couldn't let Victor hurt Marcus. As she reached the bottom of the stairs, she saw the study door was half open. She peeked inside and saw Victor standing with his back to her, the gun pointed at Marcus. Marcus's eyes flicked toward her for just a split second, and that's when Elena made her move. She grabbed a heavy marble vase from the hallway table and ran into the study, swinging it with all her strength at the back of Victor's head. The impact was sickening. Victor stumbled forward, the gun going off with a deafening crack. The bullet hit the wall behind Marcus, missing him by inches. Victor spun around, dazed and furious, and grabbed Elena by the throat. She clawed at his face, desperate, and Marcus lunged forward, tackling Victor to the ground. The two men struggled, and the gun skittered across the floor. Elena scrambled for it, her hands shaking, and pointed it at Victor. "Stop!" she screamed. "Stop, or I'll shoot." Victor froze, blood streaming down his face from where Elena had hit him. Marcus got to his feet, breathing hard, and looked at Elena. For a moment, no one moved, and then Victor laughed. It was a cold, bitter sound. "You think this is over?" he said. "You think anyone will believe you? I'll ruin both of you." But Elena didn't lower the gun. She looked at Marcus and said quietly, "Call the police." Marcus called 911, and within minutes, the mansion was swarming with officers. Victor was arrested on the spot, screaming about how Marcus and Elena had attacked him, how they were conspiring against him. But the evidence told a different story. The gun was registered to Victor. The bullet hole in the wall matched the trajectory. And when police searched Victor's car, they found documents detailing his plan. Financial records, emails, even a timeline for when he intended to take full control of the company. It was all there. Victor had been planning this for months, and Elena had saved Marcus's life. But the trauma of that night didn't end when Victor was led away in handcuffs. Elena was shaking so violently that the paramedics had to sedate her. She'd never held a gun before. She'd never been in a fight. She'd just reacted on instinct. And now, as the adrenaline wore off, the full weight of what had happened hit her all at once. She broke down in tears, and Marcus held her, whispering over and over, "You saved me. You saved me." But in the days that followed, Elena made a decision that surprised everyone. She didn't stay. When Marcus asked her to move into the mansion permanently, to be with him openly, she said no. She told him she needed time to process everything. She needed to figure out who she was outside of that house, outside of the chaos and fear. Marcus was heartbroken, but he understood. He'd spent so many years trying to control everything in his life. And now, for the first time, he had to let go. He had to let Elena make her own choice. So he did the only thing he could. He supported her. He paid for her mother's medical treatment, quietly and anonymously, sending the money through a third party so Elena wouldn't feel indebted to him. He made sure she had enough savings to take time off work, to heal, to breathe. And he waited. Elena went back to Honduras for 3 months. She spent that time with her mother, reconnecting with her family, rediscovering parts of herself she'd lost in the chaos of the past year. And slowly, she started to heal. She started to understand that what she and Marcus had wasn't just born out of trauma or isolation. It was real. But she also realized that if they were going to be together, it had to be on equal footing. She couldn't be his maid. She couldn't be his savior. She had to be his partner. When Elena returned to Connecticut in early March, she didn't go back to the mansion. Instead, She enrolled in community college to finish her degree. She got a small apartment in New Haven, and she called Marcus. They met at a quiet cafe downtown, and for the first time, they talked about the future. Not as a billionaire and a maid, but as two people who'd survived something unimaginable together. Marcus told her he'd stepped down as CEO. He'd handed the company over to a new leadership team and was focusing on philanthropic work. He was donating millions to immigrant support organizations, funding programs for workers' rights, using his wealth to try to make up for the harm people like Victor had caused. And he told Elena that he didn't want to rush anything. He didn't want to pressure her. He just wanted to be in her life, however she'd let him. Elena smiled for the first time in months. "Let's start slow," she said. And they did. They went on real dates, movies, dinners, walks through the park. They talked about their dreams, their fears, their regrets. And slowly, they built something new, something honest, something real. Today, Marcus and Elena are still together. They got married in a small ceremony 2 years after the night that changed everything. No press, no fanfare, just close friends and family. Elena finished her degree and now runs a nonprofit that helps immigrant women find safe housing and employment. Marcus works alongside her, using his resources to amplify her vision. And Victor? He's serving a 20-year sentence for attempted murder, fraud, and embezzlement. He tried to appeal, claiming he was set up, but the evidence was overwhelming. Sometimes late at night, Marcus and Elena talk about that night, about how close they came to losing everything. And Marcus always says the same thing: "You saved me." And Elena always responds the same way: "We saved each other." So here's the question I want to leave you with. Would you have done what Elena did? Would you have risked your life for someone you'd only known a few months? And if you were Marcus, would you have let her go when she asked for space? These are the kinds of questions that don't have easy answers, but they're worth thinking about. Because this story isn't just about a billionaire and a maid. It's about courage. It's about sacrifice. And it's about recognizing that sometimes love isn't about holding on. It's about knowing when to let go. If this story moved you, let me know in the comments. Tell me what you would have done. Tell me how this story made you feel. And if you want more real-life stories that will make you question everything, make sure you hit that subscribe button. My mom said I can't reach 1,000 subscribers. Let's prove her wrong. Thank you for watching. And remember, the truth is always stranger than fiction.